Today's episode features a few special guests. We'll be discussing the Blue Ribbon Project with Alyssa Brown, a proud Blue Ribbon Award winner and principal of PS 249, the Caton School. Tune in as administrators share insight on ways they can turn their schools into Blue Ribbon Award winning schools as well. The Blue Ribbon Award is a coveted national award that affirms the hard work of students, educators, families, and communities in creating a safe and welcoming school environment where students master challenging and engaging content. In addition to that, we'll be discussing Mike Lard's The Fundamental Five, the formula for quality instruction, which shares with teachers and school leaders the 5 practices that every teacher can and should use to dramatically improve instructional rigor and relevance and student performance.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank everybody for being here today. And I know this is our second meeting today because we actually did our PLC this morning, which was really terrific and insightful. And we'll talk a little bit more about the PLCs as we go through this podcast. And I really want you to talk about the PLC, where we visit classrooms and talk about the book and what's going on in our learning group so that we can think about how we can spread supporting work through other schools. So I'm going to start with, though, Alyssa Brown. So this all started when I met Alyssa Brown. Now, this is a great story. So every great relationship, I think, has a great beginning. So I was very fortunate to work in a school district that won a blue ribbon and went down to Washington to receive the award along with the principals that were in the school. And I'm appointed new as the Executive Director to CITE. And I'm on LinkedIn and I'm looking for people that might be down there that are CITE students or CITE grads. And I come across Alyssa Brown. I see her name. And then next thing I know, I see her up on a stage. And she's receiving the Terrell Bell Principal of the Year Award, National Award. And I message her and I say, if you're, I see that you're a CITE student. She's in the doctoral program at Sage. Maybe we get together. And next thing I know, she's standing next to me at the table. And I look up. She says, I'm Alyssa Brown. And we started having a conversation about schools and what the work is going on in schools, and basically invited myself in to visit her school. And she was very gracious. I didn't know what she was going to say. And she said, sure, come visit. If you want to come visit, come visit. So I set up a time with her and I visit her school. And as soon as I walked into the school, I loved it. Now, we couldn't go into her office. We couldn't go into her office because there were teachers in there engaged in a PLC, right? So professional learning conversation, for those that are listening, a PLC stands for professional learning conversation. And they were in there talking about the work that they're doing in their classrooms. And Alyssa went in and out. Clearly, she's part of this group. And we then took a tour of the school and walked around and saw what they were talking about in action in their classroom. It became clear to me that this kind of work is what led her school to this level of performance and recognition, and of course, her recognition as a Blue Ribbon principal. And then she started talking about the Fundamental Five and the fact that she had a group of principals that she was going to engage with in the PLC. And I did it again. I invited myself. I said, you think I can join? And she said, sure. I mean, for those of you that know Alyssa, you'll know that's exactly what she would say. And I joined, and the group was really gracious, and they're really open and honest about the work that they do. And one of the things that I love about the group is that we focus on the positive. What's working and what can we do to support teachers? So it's been terrific. And I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa. So Alyssa, could you just talk to us a little bit about the PLC and how that came to be, and maybe share a little bit about your school, because I know there's a lot of English language learners and some of the work that you're doing there, and then maybe introduce our friends and see if we can't get them to chime in on some things, because their voices are really critical and important to us. Alyssa?
Good morning, everyone. And so this year, PS 249, my school, which is located in the Ditmas Park, Flatbush section of Brooklyn, was nominated the National Blue Ribbon School for 2021. And then I was one of 8 principals that received the Terrell Bell Award, which is an award given to principals whose schools received the blue ribbon. out of the 325 schools that were selected for the National Blue Ribbon, 8 principals were chosen for outstanding leadership and given the Terrell Bell Award. So when we went to the ceremony, I sat on a panel with these 8 principals, and we talked about our commonalities in having a blue ribbon school. After I attended the conference, I wanted to say that I went to another conference in Florida called the National Blue Ribbon School of Excellence Conference. It's given every year. And the founder of the National Blue Ribbon Schools of Excellence is a guy by the name of Bart Thiel. Now, Bart Thiel created this organization because back in the 1990s, he explained that they had stopped giving the Blue Ribbon Award that's issued by the U.S. Department of Ed. So he thought it was a good thing for principals and he wanted to continue it. So I attended the conference this year, and in attending the conference, I had the opportunity to hear Jane Ellspermann, which is one of the co-authors of the Fundamental 5 Revisited. So after meeting Jane, of course, I bought the book and I started reading it. And then the district superintendent said that she wanted the principals to engage in PLCs. Thus, we have this group here because we wanted to learn more about subgroups, English language learners. My school has about half the population are students that speak other languages at home. And this is a subgroup that's in our district, District 17, located in Brooklyn, Crown Heights, Flatbush section of Brooklyn. So we started working as in our school communities as principals, striving also to become National Blue Ribbon. And who joined us was Bert Faustin of PS 189, Mark Marty, PS 289, Marie Chevette, PS 138, and Marie Monteau, PS 397. So we are the principals that are collaboratively working together on our common issue is how do we improve instruction for students who speak other languages at home other than English, our English language learners. And we have been engaged in the book club of reading the Fundamental 5 Revisited because it has 5 high-yield strategies that help not only ELs, but all students.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about what happened today.
Hi. I think from the very beginning that we've been focusing on how we are going to impact the learning of the ELS students, whether they are at PS 138, 289, 189, 241, and 397. But what we found a commonality among those children from whoever was presenting, whether it was 289, who was the first one, or 397, which is the last school that we saw today, among with 189, we saw a commonality among the students because, excuse me, I'm going to close my door. I'm next to the general office and I left my door open. I'm hearing a verbiage behind. Yeah. So one of the things I found is like when Miss Monteau's class was, Miss Monteau had a beautiful presentation today. One of the students who was like kind of lost with what was happening, that she didn't quite understand the concept of mathematics, was an else. We didn't know the child was an else. The principal clarified for us. But I like the way that her peers intervene in trying to explain the lesson further along with the teacher, because this is a common occurrence that we see, that the students see language develop in many ways. is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So the L's have the same problem. The first thing they learn is how to speak because they are dying to communicate. But the more complex language comes later on. And we may be thinking that child is fluent, but the child is speaking basic language, what you call BICS. But when it comes to the complex language, which is academic vocabulary, that's when we realize, oh, this child is an else. But I like the way that class that felt safe, it was a safe environment for the students where others came in to help her and, along with the teacher, and the lesson went on. And this is some of the things that is happening in all the schools in New York City. Some of the children who are else are the quietest one because they don't know and they don't want to be, they don't want to be, they don't want other people to know that they are having a problem.
Talk a little bit about what we saw today, where we saw the teacher conferencing with students and how other students sort of turned and respectfully disagreed.
So today, I think that we saw many of the features of the practices mentioned in the Fundamental 5 books. We saw the teacher who stayed in the power zone, moving throughout the class, conferencing with students, and the children were working in collaborative groups, discussing the lesson, which is another high yield strategy, this frequent small group purposeful talk. And we saw many of the elements that were mentioned in the Fundamental 5 revised book. These high yield practices impact on the student learning. But we also learned that among the schools, we have to work further on language acquisition and being purposeful about teaching the children in all of our schools and building their academic language.
In those videos, what we noticed that it was mainly the vocabulary, schools of vocabulary. I thought one of the things that was also remarkable is the sense of confidence that the classroom leaders, both in looking at 397, the video in 397, and the video from 189 as well, that when you can relinquish authority to the kids, that means you are confident in your own set of skills and competence to be able to do so. So, and I think also within the Fundamental 5, I don't know what the original version was like, but I know that this version really speaks about that the more that is done, the classroom teacher can relinquish the authority, the responsibility to learning to students, the more children learn and the better off that the school is.
That's true.
Yeah, we talked this morning about how students teaching other students actually reinforces their own learning. So that was a great part. Marie, maybe could you talk a little bit about what you've learned as we've had this conversation?
One thing, I've been the principal at PS 297 for 6 years now, and I was the AP for 5 years. And one thing that I have noticed in my teachers, it was very difficult for them to let go. So they felt that the classroom teacher must teach and the students are listening, not relinquish the power, not being able to let go, not letting the students basically get into conversations because they felt if you let go, then they're going to misbehave. So it might lead to misbehavior and the talk may not be what you really want them to talk about. Basically, they may not be talking about the lesson. But slowly but surely, when I became principal, I started modeling for them because when we have our PDs, I modeled for them doing the PDs. Well, this is what we really should do. If you're teaching a child a lesson, you may be explaining it to them in many ways and they don't understand you. And you have another child who turns around, who explained the same thing that they were doing, that 2 + 2 is 4, where you were explaining 2 + 2 is 4 for the longest and they could not understand. But this child, for whatever the reason, used whatever the technique, whatever the language, and all of a sudden the other child understands. So it took a lot for my veteran teachers who were used to being very dominant to let go of the power. And Miss Matthew was one of the teachers. She gave me a hard time at first because she's very firm, very strict, and she expects that her children are going to follow step by step, and this is the way it's done. And as I started modeling for her, I'm like, well, let go. And we would do just one group at a time. And eventually, now her lessons are more student-centered than teacher-centered. And most of my teachers are slowly transitioning to that. And I enjoyed reading the Fundamental Five. As I was mentioning this morning, I didn't realize what the power zone, what it meant, until I read this, I didn't know this was the power zone. We were doing small groups and the teachers walking around, the teachers conferencing with the student, the teacher is scaffolding for the student, the teacher is giving them ideas on how to improve and how to solve their problem and how to help themselves. I didn't know that was the power zone until I read this chapter. So I want to thank you, Ms. Bond, for introducing this book to me, because I also purchased, and I'm going to have a book club with my teachers, because I feel that there's a lot of techniques that they need to improve. We're still learning, we're learning every day. And even though this is already February, but it's not too late for us to at least try to make 1 or 2 changes.
And I just
agree.
think it's great that 5 principals across our district have gravitated toward this book, and that it's going to impact our teachers and our students collaboratively all together. And that's the power of the PLCs.
I couldn't agree more. The idea that teachers are engaged in conversations about their practice is never too late. So whether we're doing that, on the last day of school, because there's next school year, right? And so engaging in conversations about your practice is one of the most powerful things we can do. The PLCs, and one of the things that supports good PLCs are some structures. So maybe Anna, could you talk to us a little bit about the structures? Because you helped keep us on task, because I talk a lot and you make sure that I don't. So would you just talk to us a little bit about some of the structures and how that's helped?
One of the things that I do want to say is that when we started this book, we realized that, we had done a lot of the things that were mentioned in this book, but again, that we had to go back to revisit some of the things that, sometimes we do very well for some years, and then we let go or we don't monitor, and then they're not consistently done in a consistent way, like, we expect them to be done. For example, I'll give you the closure of a lesson. Here we have, of course, the TC, structure of the reading, writing workshop. And we call it the shared here. However, what we noticed was that being in TC for so many years, we were doing a share, but we weren't doing it the way, as we started to read in this text, in a more meaningful way. So in reading this book and getting into this book club with our teachers, we were able to go back to our shares of our lesson and tie it to our success criteria, so that now when we're closing our lessons, it's related to what the kids have learned, how it applies, either to real life experiences, or, if they're talking about a strategy of a lesson and so forth. So this book has allowed us to kind of just revisit some of the systems that we feel like we have kind of fell apart with.
Can you talk to us a little bit? You mentioned success criteria. What are those criteria?
So basically the success criteria, we have our teaching point, which is some people call the learning objective, of course, is what the students are expected to do. And we always want our teaching point to be kid friendly. It shouldn't be a teaching point that only the teacher can read, right? Because sometimes we've gone, years before where the teaching point didn't belong to the kids. It literally was something that the teacher wrote, and basically the students didn't have a clue what they were expected to learn. And then once the kids know exactly what they're expected to learn, then you want them to be able to tell you how they're going to be successful. How, will they know that they've, been able to accomplish all the steps of, being successful in this lesson. So we call it the success criteria. We usually ask teachers here not to write 10 steps. We ask them to keep it very simple, 2 to 3 to 4 steps of, like I can statements. And then what you do is, you start from the very beginning of your lesson. You let the kids know your teaching point. You let them know what the success criteria is during your mini lesson. And then prior to sending kids back to work independently, you want to revisit that success criteria. So that success criteria can take different forms. It can be part of the closure of your lesson, but it can also be part of students being able to peer and self-assess each other, either during independent work time or at the end of your lesson. And we felt like this year we really have stressed that what we call teacher clarity, and in part with teacher clarity, not just getting the teaching point, but you're getting the success criteria. And then to wrap it up, we always ask also the why. So it's the what of the lesson, the how of the lesson, and the why of the lesson. And then we have these 3 key questions that we ask our kids, that also relates to the success criteria. And we really, as an admin team, instructional leadership team, vertical leadership team, we've been, heavily looking at this. As admins, we've been looking at it as when we're observing our teachers, our feedback and our observations deal around teacher clarity. And we've done some PD around this for the past couple of years, but I felt like this year we've really been honing on in that teacher clarity, because we know that if teachers are clear, right, then the students are going to be clear. It's going to be clear to students, and that's very important. Teachers have to be clear, what they're teaching, so that students are clear about what they're getting ready to learn about.
Sure. That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
So Alyssa, could you talk a little bit about the actual structures that we use in the PLC? So you've set up with, I'm not sure who, maybe Anna, very, very defined structures so that when we're engaged in our PLC, we're following protocols so that we stay on task. Could you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so you're going to have me talk about a topic that I'm going to be talking about in the principals conference this week. So these principals are going to hear it more than once. Okay. So in this school, we have teacher teams, all types of teacher teams. One such team is the instructional leadership team, which is my cabinet. It consists of the assistant principals and coaches, and we meet every other week. Then we have teacher teams among the teachers by grade level, and they meet for common planning during the week. They get like 2 or 3 preps a week to come together as a grade and make decisions around, lesson planning. Then we have what's known as achievement teams, where they're looking at data, they're looking at student work, they're drilling down, they're analyzing how many students are proficient, advanced, or how many are below proficiency and how to get them there. And they usually pick a high impact instructional strategy to try out in their classrooms. So they try it out in the form of a lab site. A lab site is when there are students and teachers from a particular grade that they try and they teach. One teacher models for the rest of the team. And then they try it out with the kids right there in the same room. So the teachers spin off to work with a small group of students practicing the instructional strategy that they just learned about. So our teachers are reading Fundamental 5 Revisited. And we also have a vertical leadership team that are teacher leaders from each grade level so that the coherence takes place in the school. So inside of the vertical leadership team is the book club that we're reading and discussing, and they're bringing evidence in terms of artifacts that they have created, implementing strategies they learned in the Fundamental 5 Revisited. Then the second team is they take it back to the grade inside the achievement teams. And our next cycle of lab sites, they're going to be going into depth how to use these strategies in their teaching and learning more deeper about how to use them with students and practicing together. So it fosters collaboration, it fosters trust, and it's all about the teacher practice. It's all about the teachers learning and growing inside of these achievement teams. It's really not focused on the impact of students until they take it back to the classrooms and implement it inside their classroom. But while they're practicing in these lab sites, it's really about building the teacher practice. So that's how the work gets deeper inside the building. And that's how it spreads across the building in these different teams. So these teams build leaders. And inside the team, there's always a teacher leader that's in charge of facilitating the meeting. Then there's a person who is responsible for keeping the paperwork. They keep the agendas, they keep it in Google Drive. And then I could peek in and see what specifically happened at any one of these meetings is shared with everyone. So they're looking.
Where'd you learn how to do all this?
Well, actually, I worked with a consultant. His name is Steve Ventura. And he helped us get this started in the building. And he comes a few times a year to just, revisit things with us. In fact, he is writing a book that's coming out in the spring, all about these achievement teams. But one of my teachers met him at a visible learning conference in Chicago a few years ago. And she said, I think we should get him to come back to the school. This is like some good work. And I've been reading a lot as a SAGE doctoral student about the power of teachers having input in the type of professional development that comes to the building. Mm-hmm. So this teacher identified him. Another teacher identified using lab sites as part of our 80-minute PD. So teachers voted to modify the contract so that we could have students stay back on 1 day a week to practice in lab sites. These are the ideas of the teacher leaders in the building. It didn't come from me. I just went with it. And I've been learning actually from my teachers.
That's powerful. The entire system learning together. And that servant leadership that you're practicing is I'm just speechless that's what you're doing. I mean, that's amazing work. And that's where the power, we can always get our teachers, to comply with what we want them to do. If we tell them, they'll do it and they'll do it the best they can. But if they come up and figure this out on their own, then there's real commitment. And
yes, it has been a commitment. And they've been doing this, I would say, more than 5 years now. And I would attribute like the blue ribbon to that practice, like constantly being grounded to the work, meeting in teams, having the vertical leadership team, and just the collaboration and the teachers that build. Like leadership has built, I've seen my coaches become APs and, teachers become coaches. Like the building is on fire with that kind of work.
That is amazing. Well, really plug the SAGE doctoral program is one of CITE's, so that's a little plug for CITE. So I'm glad that it's beneficial for you, Alyssa.
One of the benefits for me, just working on this particular book in the PLC format, is just getting feedback from my colleagues, especially getting feedback from Ms. Brown, who has a blue ribbon school. So when I posed my problem of practice, I was able to get a lot of feedback from my peers, and I was able to reflect on it and improve my practice at my school. And I think this is one of the major benefits of having a principal PLC, is just being able to collaborate with other principals, get feedback from them, and then trying to implement the practice at my school so I can excel achievement at my school. And it was wonderful seeing practices at other schools, being able to view other classroom practices to see what the teachers are doing, because I was able to see where I was on the right track and where I needed to go back and revise some of the systems and protocols that I have in place.
That's, you said something really powerful there about seeing other schools in action, right? So every school is a closed system. It knows itself and it does really great work, right? But to grow some of that, you need to see what's going on in other places. And sometimes it reaffirms what you're doing. Sometimes you learn from it. Sometimes you see things that say, that works there, but it won't work for us. And that's okay. That doesn't mean anybody's doing anything wrong. It just means it works there. But this idea that we can then reach out and engage with other principals, other teachers, so that everybody is a learning group. To me, that's one of the powers of this. If I have a dream here around this, it's that we can grow this into working with teachers and teachers from each of these schools working together so that they could share what's their best practices and what's working. I know that logistically that's not easy, but again, if their teachers are committed to it, it may be something that we can do.
I just want to add that, I have to thank the superintendent for allowing the principals to meet because, the district said we want to implement PLCs with the principals this year. And then we picked which group we wanted to join. So usually when we have a principals conference, we barely get to talk to one another. But I thought that, Superintendent Lindsay gave us the opportunity to be able to have the time and the space to collaboratively join forces and work together, which is, powerful to do.
I don't think we chose. It was fate that brought us together. I think it's a very, very powerful group of educators.
I would agree with you.
I second that.
I like that.
I couldn't agree more. Before I do close, did I miss anything? Does anybody want to get in? Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to say that technology has allowed us to visit during a time in COVID where we've been able to visit one another's classrooms, despite what's going on in the world. And I also want to thank, our APs and coaches that we're not able to come to every single meeting, but able to pop in and also get a little taste of this. And I don't see this as, doing this for a couple of months, a few weeks, but it could definitely make a difference for all of our schools if we continue to collaborate and find the time and the space to do it.
I agree. It's an iterative process. If I have my way, we'll be having this conversation. It may be in a different form for the next X number of years, 8, 10, 12 years, because I think that is really powerful. So thank you. And
I want to thank you, Donald, for supporting our work and Andrew for highlighting our practice.
I second that. Absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
That's right.
All the best.
All
Have
right.
a great day and stay safe, everyone.
Have a good one,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.